Raw salmon from the grocery store doesn't quite taste like the sashimi in your local Japanese restaurant. For one, oddly crispy. Turns out, the secret is in curing the salmon. It's easy enough. Sprinkle some salt, toss some sugar, refrigerate until done. I'll leave the recipe in the comments. When done, your salmon will be sitting in a liquid. May or may not twitch as shown. The liquid is a briny fish syrup that you can either have as a refreshment or you can wash it off. Pat dry, cut into neat slices, or not, whatever. Then eat. What's happening here? What is the mechanism by which the cure improves the salmon? The salt and sugar in the cure diffuse into the salmon and enhances its flavor. But just as important, the excess seasoning on the surface also draw the water out. This concentrates flavors and color and also firms up the texture. But what does the dose-response curve look like for curing salmon? In other words, how much dehydration is optimal? Will the relationship look like this? Or like this? Or is it a hormesis curve where a little bit is optimal? The problem is that to achieve this level of dryness using the salt and sugar cure, we need to add a ton of salt and sugar, and that would potentially make the salmon too salty and sweet. So, how can you draw out the water without too much salt or sugar diffusing into the salmon tissue? Well, as it turns out, and you might want to sit down for this, salmon is made mostly of cells. I happen to know a lot about cells, at least enough to draw 4 organelles. Let's look at the movement of salt and sugar at a molecular level with a diagram of an enterocyte from the small intestines. These microvilli make him look sick. I think I'll hang this up. Looks like the fridge is full. This one will go. Wait, let's pause. You might wonder, how did he do it so fast? How did he objectively decide the worth of his children's art? Behold, my greatest contribution to the field of science! So the utility of the artwork is represented by epsilon, which is equal to alpha, the aesthetic value of the art, divided by omega, which represents the order of birth of the child who arted. You take this ratio and you raise it to the power of the love you have for your child, here represented by the Greek letter L, ligma. Ligma is an exponential that allows for some algebraic trickery so that the minimum value of the artwork, epsilon, is 1 when ligma is not. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to the enterocyte and review how molecules cross cell membranes. These are protein channels. Yes, they are. Sodium in salt has a positive charge, so it can't enter the cell. Look at it try. It's pathetic. But cells need it, so they have ion channels that selectively allow sodium through, sometimes lithium. Small unionized molecules like ethanol do whatever they want. That's probably why Starbucks hates unionized workers. Glucose is relatively large and polar and can't diffuse, but obviously cells make it work through ion channels, otherwise we'd all be DKO'd. These fat molecules are unionized, but they're too big to go through the lipid layer, just like Ryan's mom and a standard door. So our salt and sugar solution diffuse into the salmon because they have their own channels, or through other pathways like pericellular diffusion. But if we want something that stays outside of the cell, we will need it to be either charged or larged, amongst other criteria. Let's go over those. What we need is something to pull out water that is hygroscopic, in other words, absorbs water, cannot diffuse through salmon tissue, tasteless, generally accepted as edible. I thought about it for a bit, Then it finally hit me. A diaper! But I ran out of diapers a while ago, so we'll have to go for second best. We should probably use a compound from the library of marketed approved pharmaceuticals that fit these criteria to eliminate irresponsible compounds. Then it came to me. Can we get a drum roll? My solution is PEG. PEG is a laxative that you take by mouth, and it sucks in water. And it also does not get absorbed, therefore stays in the digestive tract because it's a long ass chain. An osmotic laxative, in other words. And a really good one. A wise man once said, "The etiology of all constipation is PEG deficiency." That was me. I just said that. But the ultimate question is, can you use this for salmon? Pfft, yeah, of course. Pegging is actually very common in medicine. If you can peg filgrastim, then why can't I peg some salmon? Don't let dreams just be dreams, kids. So what happens if you put peg on salmon? By the way, peg is much larger than what it looks like here because the number of oxyethylene varies. So peg comes in different molecular weights, or flavors, as you would never say because it's flavorless. So the laxative, PEG 3350, means that the average molecular weight is 3350 arbitrary units. Now, I recognize that some of you might feel uncomfortable with this chemical notation, so here, I hope you feel better and find some help. Anyway, because it's a long chain, recall that it would be too large to cross cell membranes or tissue, so PEG will not diffuse into the salmon tissue. It will, however, suck up all the water from its surroundings, just like it would in your intestines, and we will achieve a level of dehydration not possible with the usual treatment. Cardiologists hate this one trick. Without further ado, here's the recipe for PEG salmon. Same process as before. Sprinkle some salt, about 0.5% of the weight of the salmon, divided for each side. 1% sugar, divided, but this time sprinkle 5% PEG, again divided. Of course, you need to store this in the fridge to avoid the microbial danger zone. You don't want to have E. coli. No, I mean salmonella. Oh, can we do this again? You don't want to have salmonella. Excellent. Here is the result out of the fridge after 24 hours. Forbidden fish syrup? Check. Here I am, poking it a lot. You'll have to believe me that it's noticeably firmer. Feels like the salmon has never skipped leg day. I also may have inadvertently tenderized it by the excessive poking. But how did it taste, actually? Oishii! Which I believe is a loan phrase from the English colloquial expression, "Oh shit!" By the way, never expose PEG to heat during cooking because the heat degradation products are toxic, like formaldehyde toxic, which is no fun, unlike informaldehyde. Let's summarize the results. I'll start with flavor. The PEG salmon was to die for. 8 out of 10. As for the texture, was about a type 2. Of course, I'm using the only texture scale I know, the Bristol scale. As for diarrhea, very. Well, there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this educational video and appreciate the versatility of PEG the next time you're having sashimi.